Hello, welcome to another episode of Forgotten Cemeteries of the Pacific Northwest. Today we're at Frankton Cemetery. Only location listed as Hood River County, but I guess we could say Hood River, Oregon to be more specific. Alternative name of the cemeteries, the cemetery includes Bacchus, Old Pioneer, and Smith Burial Ground. Also listed as Irving Cemetery and find a grave that confuse even more. However, let's go meet some of the local residents and hear their story. A little history about this cemetery, very limited. Couldn't find an establishment date, but the claim is that this is the first white cemetery in the county. I read in 1868 a post office was established in Hood River. The earliest burial listed on Find a Grave is 1879, so maybe 1870s around there for establishment date. One of the alternative names for the cemetery is Bacchus, as said before. I did see there was a Bacchus family member who came to Oregon in 1847 and a bunch in 1850. However, Frankton is the western community side of Hood River, so that's probably where it came from. Named for Frank Bacchus. Coincidentally, none of the Bacchuses reside in this cemetery. To be even more confusing, a body was removed from this cemetery and relocated to Seattle, Washington Cemetery in 1905. Another report said several graves were moved to Idlewild Cemetery. That cemetery is located in Hood River County as well. Some individuals chose to be cremated and their ashes spread along Hood River, so it's sort of all over the place, and it appears this cemetery has lost numbers. Usually you gain numbers. Not this one. Heavily neglected and doesn't appear to be taken care of, let go in a sense. I did see like a little sign where an Eagle Scout made it their project to clean up the cemetery at one time. I think it was like 2007 or something like that, so that was kind of neat. And someone at one time built that nice sign we just saw in the intro of the video and put up fencing around the graves. In 1973, there was one sentence report that the cemetery was badly vandalized in 1973. Couldn't find that newspaper report, sadly. In 1927, there are 27 known burials reported. Oregon Burial Site Guide sounds like 0 to 25 for the estimate. There's only 19 names listed on Find a Grave, however. As said, a few have been moved out of this cemetery. The website I read stated that there is indeed RIP unknown on headstones, so I guess we'll see for ourselves today, but I really don't see that much here so far in my walkthrough. Heavy on the infant and children burials here. An influenza outbreak appears to be the main cause. Reading up, I can only find something called the Russian influenza that hit Oregon in 1889, so unsure if that stuff hit this area or something unrelated to that Russian one. Today, a quiet one. One Civil War veteran will meet a child whose father was the first Hood River Valley resident and learn a new Native American Chinook word, so that should be cool. And finally, hear about 1800s medical quackery and the heartbreaking story of a man who tried to save a 9-year-old boy during the Oregon Trail. Our first stop is Benjamin F. Hall, born in 1835 in Mercer County, Pennsylvania. He is a Civil War vet serving in Company D of the 33rd Iowa Infantry. Appears they were involved with a lot of small skirmishes overall and helped with the repulse of Confederate General Holmes' attack on Helena. Another famous engagement the 33rd took part in was the Battle of Jenkins Ferry in Little Rock, Arkansas. Sadly, Benjamin died at the age of 55, unsure why, but had a son buried in San Diego. No info on his wife as well, so little mystery guy here. And up ahead is the memorial of Irving, McKinney Smith, and Laura Smith. From what I read, they were buried here, but their father, Ezra Leonard Smith, who was the first Hood River Valley citizen apparently, believed that cremation was a better way of going out instead of burial. Irving and Laura here were disinterred from what Find a Grave said, and their ashes were spread along the Columbia River. A little bit on Ezra Smith, the father. As said, he was apparently the first Hood River Valley citizen and played a big part in the early settlement in this area. He was president of the State Horticulture Society, State Board of Agriculture, and served on the Oregon legislature for Wasco County, actually, and was Speaker of the House. Ezra was also a big lover of Indian legends and had several epic stories he learned. Sadly, he never had a chance to record them and pass them along in history. Forgotten and lost stories, much like this cemetery. Somewhere out there on this cold morning is the final resting place of Bernard Warren. Though I have read he is laid next to his children, so hopefully we'll see their headstone, maybe it's here. He was born in 1839, 1840, or 1849 based on the sources. Regardless, he was born in Ireland but spent most of his time in Scotland. Came to the USA sometime in 1860s, stopping in Ohio, then lived in California for a couple of years. finally came to Oregon in 1877 and is classified as a Hood River pioneer. Had a farm and had an interest in the local school, to the point they canceled classes apparently the day of his funeral, so a pretty popular guy. And our final stop is the memorial of Herbert Ray Crockett, only the age of 1 when he died, sadly. As said, there's a lot of children and infants buried here. However, his father, Samuel Black Crockett, is a pioneer of 1844. Herbert's father tried his luck during the California Gold Rush and failed miserably, I guess. Returned back to Tumwater, Washington. I read that Tumwater is Chinook jargon for a waterfall, so we learned a new Native American word. Then he built the first grist mill in Tumwater, and in addition built 2 forts with his brother in 1856. Not sure if they're still standing, but in 1905, Samuel came back to Hood River and removed the body of the 1-year-old Herbert here, though his headstone remains. So we have a lot of children buried here, unfortunately, at this cemetery, as said. The range here for children or young deaths appears to be in the 1880s area. Coincidentally, medical quackery was at its peak in the 1800s, so let's talk about strange treatments. Medicine in the 1800s compared to today was a little different, as you can guess. Imagine walking down the street in the 1800s. It was like pop-up ads or those annoying freaking YouTube ads. FYI, if you see those on my videos, those are not me. Doctors back then didn't even know how to clean their tools or wash their hands. Unknowingly, they were infecting their patients even worse. Hospitals back then weren't really for healing, apparently. It was more for the poor or someone on their last leg. If you were there, most likely it was all game for you. To be honest, most people didn't want to go to the doctor because it was sort of that nobody had a freaking clue what they were doing. Most states stopped certifying doctor, got to that point, because let's face it, the state or government doesn't want that responsibility on their hands. Really, back then, anyone could put up a sign and say, hey, I got a cure for your cough. Some treatments included diets like eating a piece of celery for a week or electrical shock treatments. Others included ice baths and wet blankets. Indian doctors got in on this too, and to be honest, we still state them today, don't we? Eat this plant root and you'll be a sex machine. High fever was often treated with cutting open your vein and draining blood. Dragon's blood was a form of a mercury medicine. It was a really bright resin from a plant from the palm family, and it's still used to this day actually, and I guess it's pretty effective. What's interesting to us on this channel is that during the Oregon Trail, there were these unsung heroes who had genuine skill and knowledge of medicinal treatments, often being put in positions of low medicine stock and turning to their creativity along the trail to treat the sick and injured. However, fake doctors came about the Oregon Trail as well. Can't have the good without the bad, right? I'm going to read you an account during the Oregon Trail journey of a real doctor who tried to save a boy from a previous doctor who absolutely sucked at his job. Edwin Bryant's account is as follows. A boy of 8 or 9 of age had his leg crushed by falling from a tongue of a wagon and being run over by its wheels. When I reached the tent of the unfortunate family to which the boy belonged, I found him stretched out upon a bench made of plank, ready for operation, which they expected I would perform. I soon learned that the accident occasioning the fracture had occurred 9 days previously, that a person professing to be a doctor had wrapped some linen loosely about the leg and made sort of a trough or plank box in which it had been confined. In the condition, the child remained without any dressing of his wounded limb until last night. When he called to his mother, he said he could feel worms crawling along his leg. An examination of the wound for the first time was made, and it was discovered that gangrene had taken place, and the limb of the child was swarming with maggots. I made an examination. The limb had been badly fractured and never been bandaged, and from one neglect, gangrene had supervened. The child's leg from his foot to his knee was in a state of pure petrification. The surgical instruments to be used were a common butcher knife, a carpenter's handsaw, and a shoemaker's awl to take up the arteries. The man commenced sawing, but before he had completed the amputation of the bone, he concluded the operation should be performed above the knee. During these demonstrations, the boy never uttered a groan or complaint, but I saw that he was dying. The operator, without noticing this, proceeded to sever the leg above the knee. A cord was drawn around the limb, so tight that it cut through the skin into the flesh. A knife and saw were then applied to the limb, and then it was amputated. A few drops of blood only oozed from the stump. The child was dead. His miseries were over. Alrighty, time for the tour, which will be very short. This little sign here. To get here, there's a vet clinic down the hill. And they like, if if you're gonna park there, just go in and say, hey, is it okay if I park here? I'm gonna go visit the cemetery. And then they're apparently cool about that. They don't make a big deal. They're like, oh, thanks for letting us know. You kind of have to look towards the woods, and your landmark literally is a dead lawnmower. You find that dead lawnmower, behind it there'll be a trail that's not so obvious. Just make it up as you go. That's my advice. And should lead to the cemetery. It's one of the more hidden ones I visited. It's tall as well. Some American flags here. Don't know if they're recent or just old. It's fairly withered. As you can see, there used to be some upkeep here, not so much anymore. There's Herbert, the 1-year-old. Don't know if a monument used to be there. This cemetery is very broken, I'd say. Definitely forgotten. Matter of fact, when I asked the nice woman at the veterinarian clinic, I was like, hey, do you know how to get to the cemetery? She's like, I didn't even know there was one over there. It's literally like a minute walk from the vet clinic. It tells you how isolated it is. We talked about the children of George Smith. I don't know if these are previous markers or what. But if you visit, this one will bring you down, man. It's a sad one. Not much left. Come during the day. Don't come at night. Be one of those weirdos. There's questionable things along your walking path, let's say, as you make your way up to the cemetery. Just a lot of garbage, a lot of debris, litter. Sadly, I don't see any other headstones. I think I counted 4 in total. Not taken care of very well. But anyway, hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. If you have any other recommendations of cemeteries in Oregon to visit, let me know. Have a good one and stay safe.